Greetings, Light Tribe. Janine Palmer here, Spirit Silver Moon for Standing Holy Hierophant. And it is March of 2020 when most of the world is pretty much on lockdown. Because a major shift is happening, and there's a lot of people that understand what it is, why it is, and are not drawn into fear because they have deeper understanding. So I wanted to talk about a couple things. I'm going to refer to a few books and some notes that I have highlighted. And the reason for this, a lot of people are doing videos to try to spread awareness or share a perspective of a type of awareness that may or may not be helpful to some people. So, you know, what I share is only from my limited perspective and from what I have learned to date. I've done a lot of studying, and I want to share some of the knowledge from some sources. And this is what triggered it today. Okay. Some people are remaining calm with the stuff that's going on in the world right now, and some people definitely are not. They're very afraid. And some people understand that fear is a trap. Okay, so sometimes we see dialogue, and we can choose to engage in that dialogue. We might respond to it in a way that might deliver a message for someone that might be that little mustard seed, that might be something that will help them to maybe open up to something a little bit different that might be helpful to them. Who knows? There is a lot of stuckness and there's a lot of stagnation in this world, which is why I do what I do from my perspective or perspectives. Okay. So it was a comment. I had shared a post that talked about what a wonderful man Jesus is. And a friend of mine shared that post and tagged me in it. And I have a different understanding because I have taken the responsibility to be a seeker of knowledge. But I saw a comment that said that Jesus is sorting souls. That programming, that stagnation of tar and stuckness through the energy of fear doesn't serve humanity anymore. That's why you see what's happening in the world happening right now, to shake it up and shake it off, because it's incomplete and it's largely false. It's completely misunderstood and misinterpreted. Jesus is sorting souls. Really? I don't think so. I don't think Jesus finds one soul any more important or worthy than another, any more loved or any less loved than another. But certain religious programmings cause us to think that we're not worthy unless we follow some belief system, that we're part of that groupthink, egoic groupthink. And then this person talked about the game that God's playing with us. God doesn't play games. Really? Not the high God. So yeah, maybe there is a God that's playing games, that's feeding off of our suffering. Let's be aware of that. So, I mean, there could be truth in that belief, that incomplete belief, that false belief. But really, if the God that hopefully people want to be reconnected with doesn't play games, he's not a game player. He's not a puppet master. Okay, so this leads me to want to share some information from some of my books for those who are interested, but that's only going to be people who are open enough to want to maybe learn something from a different perspective, to detach themselves from a type of stuckness that's driven by fear, that has created the shitstorm that we've seen in this world for the past 2,000 years, that's now on its way out. And guess what? Earth is raising her vibration, and so is humanity, and they have a choice because we're in a free will zone. So people can choose to raise their vibration, or then what? They get left behind by their own choice, which is in the old realm, old dynamic, old paradigm that's going to involve more suffering, supposedly. So when people are swimming in ignorance and fear, are they suffering? Probably, yeah. So allow me to share with you just a few highlighted bits from some of these books. I can show you the cover, but it will be backwards. This one's called The Laughing Jesus. This is by Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy, religious scholars. And I'm just going to read a few highlighted things that I highlighted years ago. This one's just, this is talking a lot about literalism, okay? So This one says, what begins as a loose alliance of free-thinking nonconformists degenerates over time into an organized authoritarian religion, and people end up completely misunderstanding the original message. We refer to this degenerate form of Gnosticism as literalism or fundamentalism. The original followers of Jesus didn't believe what is believed today, and today we call them Gnostics, and gnosis means knowledge. Okay, the next one I want to read, this is on the little chapter part called The Baby in the Bathwater. Let's stop blindly believing in old books and listen instead to those heretical voices that have been drowned out by the, sorry if I can't pronounce this right, cacophony of literalist war cries. Just imagine for a moment what the Gnostics have been telling us throughout the ages is true. We appear to be separate, but essentially we are all one. Many people get this, but it's the separation that causes the fear and suffering. The awareness that is conscious in you is the same awareness that is conscious in everyone. If we're conscious and sort of like awakened, or if we're sort of unconscious and sort of asleep or very programmed. And if you recognize this, you will find yourself in love with all. Okay, so the next one I'm going to go to says, let's see. Yeah, I think I'm not going to read that one. This is talking about literalism. But this one also is about fundamentalists, and it says, the great irony is that the fundamentalists of different persuasions share much in common. Their vision of life and how to live it is driven by the same needs and neuroses. What they hate in the other is a projection of what they hate in themselves. If we had been brought up in a different culture, they would be fundamentalists of another persuasion. Religious fundamentalism is an irrational pathology which leads otherwise decent men and women to become enemies of open-mindedness and big-heartedness, and enlist the service of divinely sanctioned bigotry. Fundamentalism creates dangerously self-righteous people who turn against those who espouse the truly spiritual values of love, tolerance, and understanding. Fundamentalists particularly loathe members of their own faith who suggest dialogue with the other. So this is going to talk, a bit about separation, or the illusion of it. The first monotheists, okay. Traditionally, we are told that Judaism brought the doctrine of monotheism to a poor, benighted humanity for the first time. But this is merely Jewish and Christian propaganda, because it came from earlier Sumerian texts that were borrowed. Nowhere in the whole of the Tanakh, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, is there an unequivocal statement of monotheism. Cunning editorship and translation has disguised the fact that there are an embarrassing number of gods running around the Bible. The stories told in the books of Moses refer to the gods El and Yahweh, but El is sometimes masculine, sometimes feminine, and sometimes plural, because it is plural because it's Elohim. The famous opening words of Genesis, for example, speaks of gods in plural. In the beginning, the gods created the earth. Archaeologists have also discovered the plurality of Yahwehs. So, I think there's a couple more in this book that I wanted to share. But not that one. That was interesting, but I'm just not going to go there. Okay, heaven and hell. Fear is the basic tool of a literalist religion, and there is no fear greater than the fear of death, except the fear of God's punishment after death. Like so many self-proclaimed prophets. Well, this goes into another religion. I'm not going to carry on with that one. Okay, waking the dead. The essential message of Christianity is that whilst we identify with the separate self, we are dead and need to come to life or to resurrect. In the Greek used by the original Christians, the word usually translated resurrect means to awaken. The resurrection represents waking up and experiencing gnosis. That's knowledge. That's self-knowledge. That's within. Okay. Books might direct you to it. Religions might direct you to it, but it's what's within. The resurrection is not something which happened in the past to Jesus. That's just a story, because these pagan stories have been passed down since way before Jesus's time. Neither is it something which may happen to you after you die. That, so I don't want to go into that, but it just says the resurrection is something you must experience for yourself in this present moment by becoming conscious of your essential nature as awareness. A Christian text called the Treatise on the Resurrection, which could equally be called the Treatise on Awakening, announces the world is an illusion. The resurrection, awakening is the revelation of reality. So some people will really get that. Okay, and I think that's all for this book. And they have 3 books, and I'm going to be sharing something, not as many as these other ones. The next one is The Jesus Mysteries, same authors, Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy. They talk a lot about the pagan connections between all these different stories that have been passed down. So in this one it says, like Christianity, the mysteries, because Christianity is a mystery school, really. But the mysteries had a doctrine of original sin. Plato teaches that the soul is banished into the body as a punishment for some unnamed ancient crime. According to Empedocles, we are wandering through the 4 elements to atone for guilt incurred in the divine world. The mysteries taught that the original sin was separation from God. The sacrificial death of God-man, or the sacrificial animal he kills, represents the initiate's own symbolic death to their lower animal nature and rebirth to their divine nature, which unites them with God and so atones for this original crime. So people are going around in their ignorance killing animals for millennia, still ongoing, sleeping in face down in tar pits, really. Okay, the next one I want to share, Spiritual Rebirth. The key to understanding the myth of resurrection, both in the mysteries and the story of Jesus, is that mystically, death is rebirth. Initiates of the mysteries underwent a voluntary death, which they emerged spiritually reborn, just as Jesus offers his followers the opportunity to be born again. Osiris is he who giveth birth unto men and women a second time, and he who maketh mortals to be born again. When he dies to his lower self, the initiate of the mysteries is also in labor giving birth to his higher self. These are the hardships we go through. This is why gall, which has been given to women in labor, was drunk by the Hierophant in the Eleusinian mysteries and offered to Jesus on the cross. Jesus mystically equates death and rebirth in the Gospel of John when he predicts, "A little while and you will not see me, and again a little while you will see me. In very truth I tell you, you will weep and mourn, but the world will be glad. But though you are plunged into grief, your grief will be turned to joy. A woman in labor has pain because her time has come, but when the child is born, she forgets the anguish in her joy that a man has been born into the world." Okay, that's enough for this book. And then the other book, I think there's just like 1 or 2. There's one that I was specifically looking for, and I didn't remember which book it was in, but it's this one, Jesus and the Lost Goddess. Same authors, Timothy Freke and Peter Gandy. So, a journey of initiation. The inadequate translation has also played a significant role in disguising the secret teachings of Christianity encoded in the New Testament Gospels and alluded to frequently by Paul in his letters. Rendering these works into familiar churchy English lulls us into the reassuring illusion that we have understood what is being said, when in fact we have not even begun to scratch the surface of the real significance of the original Greek. Okay, literalists believe that their particular spiritual tradition is different from all others and has a unique claim on the truth. They obsessively formulate dogmas which define membership to their particular cult. They are prepared to enforce their opinions on and silence those who dissent, justifying their actions by claiming that they are fulfilling God's will. Gnostics, meaning the more of the original followers of Christ from back in the day, on the other hand, are free spirits who question the presuppositions of their own culture. They follow their hearts, not the herd. They are consumed by their private quest for enlightenment, not by the goal of recruiting more adherents of a religion. Gnostics wish to free themselves from the limitations of their personal and cultural identities and experience the oneness of all things. They therefore have no reluctance in adopting the wisdom of other traditions, and if it adds something to their own. Literalists use religion to sustain their personal cultural identity by defining themselves in opposition to others. Feeding that darkness, people. This inevitably leads to disputes with those outside of their cult. It is literalists who fight wars of religion with literalists from other traditions, each claiming God is on their side. Which God? Literalist enmity also extends to Gnostics within their own tradition who question their bigotry. Most spiritual traditions have a tragic history of the brutal oppression of Gnostics by intolerant literalists. Increasingly, it is never the other way around. Paul tells us that he personally experienced Christ. It was, it was a vision of light on the road to Damascus. Damascus was a code word used by the Essenes to refer to their base in Qumran, which suggests that Paul, like Simon, had Essene affiliations. He uses the same language as the Essenes, for example, when he describes human beings as being enslaved by the powers of fate, imagined as the elemental rulers of the cosmos, the archons of this dark cosmos from which Christ has set us free. Christ brought the knowledge for those with ears to hear. The whole purpose of Gnostic initiation was to bring initiates to spiritual maturity, where they would experience themselves to be completely free of any external authority and become their own Christ or king. Literalists, by contrast, wanted to enlarge their religious power base and worked hard to keep their flock securely in the fold, despite the fact that in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus teaches, everyone, when his training is complete, will reach his teacher's level. If we're open enough to seek and learn and apply. The Gnostic idea that Christianity was about oneself becoming a Christ became branded a blasphemous heresy. And now you see the state of the world today. The role of the Gnostic master was to undermine all of the initiates' opinions and encourage them to confront the mystery of life. The role of literalist bishops, on the other hand, was to tell people what to believe and to discipline those who disagreed. Free intellectual inquiry was actively discouraged, and blind belief became as exalted as a spiritual virtue. Oh, and I forgot a part just before that. This one just says, oh no, actually, there was one other piece that I was looking for. I don't think I have read it yet. Okay, so I probably will not be including that one in this one because I'm not finding it. But I think that that's some food for thought as far as, you know, whether or not God is playing games, you know. And then, but no, the other thing I wanted to do was, if you want to learn more about Jesus, Deepak Chopra wrote The Third Jesus. This is an amazing book. And at the very end, I wanted to share just a couple things from this one. And it says, what would Jesus do, is the last chapter here. And it says, I could not conclude a book about Jesus without delving into the social crisis that Christianity faces, not just in America, but around the world. The faith has been hijacked by movements that violate Jesus' teaching, even as they proclaim they are defending it. A religion of love has moved alarmingly in the direction of hatred, although outright hatred may not be preached from the pulpit. What is preached is self-righteous intolerance. Jesus taught humility not just as an antidote to pride, but as another way to become free. The ego, with all its wishes, fears, ambitions, likes, and dislikes, dominates everyone's existence, and therefore almost no one sees the truth, which is that ego is an enormous burden. Its concerns are endless, its anxieties are inescapable, its victories are temporary, and its isolation is crippling. To get his followers to see this truth clearly, Jesus wanted them to experience what it's like to be powerless, overlooked, and unknown. In other words, to be last. The ego can't tolerate being last, since its insatiable goal is to be first. In a word, where winning and losing are two sides of the same illusion, there is a third way. Use today's crisis for tomorrow's growth. It's Christian to engage with love. When you don't engage, you cannot experience your authenticity. You cannot prove your degree of love, tolerance, and forgiveness against your hidden prejudice, intolerance, and judgment. External conflicts serve that purpose, and that purpose on the spiritual path, when they reflect the internal state of conflict that needs to be healed. And in this way, you discover how much distance separates you from your soul. And the distance is part of the illusion, really. I'm just going to see if I could still find that other part that I was wanting to share with you guys. You know, so there's a lot of programming going on that causes people to repeat what they've learned, and to basically mistreat their brethren. That they think that some people are unworthy. You know, that some people are going to be chosen because they're worthy, and other people are going to be left behind. But being left behind is part of the choice of this life experience. So what I might do is, I found the one I was looking for, and I put little page markers and everything, but it's very curious right now that one, I know I didn't read it, and now I can't find it. So what I might have to do then is to just do another video when I find that, because it was extremely powerful. So yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just do another video when I find what he was saying, because it was about, oh, here it is. Okay, the literalist heresy. This is what this whole video was meant to be about, so I'm glad I looked again and found it. The Gnostic, I just missed it when I was going through. Okay, the Gnostic myth that Jesus would appear at the culmination of time was an allegory expressing the idea that when all souls are reunited with the consciousness of God, there would be a return to the primordial state of oneness, and the cosmic drama would be over. Wait for it. Literalists took this myth literally, developing the grotesque idea that Jesus was about to arrive to destroy the world, rescue a small group of Christian literalists, and condemn everyone else to eternal torment. Thankfully, they turned out to be wrong. Thank the gods, or thank God, or whatever. Anyway, so little wake-up call there. Some people might really understand that. Some people might be offended by it because it doesn't fit in with their programming. So who's going to be left behind? Those who are closed off in fear and self-righteousness and, you know, whatever that tar might be, or those who are open to begin to understand themselves on a deeper level, for however they need to shift their vibration, to raise their vibration, to change their perspective, to open their hearts, not close down in any type of cultishness. So hopefully that video might be of interest or assistance to anyone in these times right now. As always, blessings, love, and light, peace, and joy. Praise the Lord.